Alrighty, everyone. So we are going to go ahead and go directly into round two over here. The last match versus two control players took the entire time. So we are ready to get started on round two, and players are mulliganing. We're going to get to see what archetypes they are playing in just a little bit as we catch glimpses of the hand. And is it going to be another control matchup? Is it going to be something like aggro versus control or two aggro decks, some sort of combo decks? Who knows? Everything is more or less really good in the Lorcana card game right now, and it's just about refining those strategies. And this being one of the first IRL events that I personally get to commentate, it's going to be super exciting to see, how much of what cards that people have access to in general, and then what they choose or deem is enough or good enough to be played in this sort of tournament setting. So just want to see how well the online metagame translates into IRL, and that's one of the most exciting things to see. We already saw Red Purple in round one playing the one drop Maleficent, something different from the norm. So super exciting to see that. And it looks like the right sided player is playing the most recent contender for best deck in the format, the yellow steel deck, and it's a song based strategy involving and he plays Hakuna Matata. I love this addition in the deck, being able to be searching it with Ariel if he does actually play Ariel in his deck. Hopefully we see it at some point in the game. Being able to search that song and ink it, just a great card when inked and found through Ariel. So great addition to that deck and a great innovation in general. So we will see if he's actually leaning towards that sort of song package or is more of an aggressive strategy. But I really do hope to see Ariel at some point from that side. And then from the other side, let's see what is being played. This might actually be a mirror match. Our player on the left keeping her cards very close. And we do see an amber card, so it is amber steel as well. So we get to see a mirror match. And how far into the song packages do these players get to lean towards? A lot of songs actually from the right side of player. Who there we do see Ariel. So this Ariel being able to go get something like the 5 cost uh, songs in the color, as well as that Hakuna Matata being able to be inked, and we do get to see it ink there. So not at 3 ink quite yet, but we will see that Ariel shortly from one side. And being on the play, I do believe is very important in this matchup. So let's see if the player on the right can capitalize on something like that. Oh, actually, the player on the left is the one who went first. So can she actually capitalize on that small advantage? Deciding want to ink, keeping her cards close, difficult to see, but okay, so she does ink Rapunzel. Rapunzel not that good in the early game in the mirror match, a lot better toward the later turns of the game when trading resources, but for right now being used as ink and then fueling that sort of song strategy, being able to search a song when played. And we do get to see Hakuna Matata from this side too. So players actually opting to play Hakuna Matata just to be searched with this aerial. And I love this sort of consistency piece. Just being established as one of the important cards to be able to search. The card obviously inkable. And a lot of the songs played in steel are not inkable. So just a wonderful addition for these sort of strategies. And how does the player on the right get to respond in the mirror? Obviously, Ariel, incredibly powerful card as it gets to sing Whole New World, but being inked here is so incredibly surprising. So opting to go ahead and and he actually does something a little unexpected. So this is incredibly interesting. So he goes ahead and he says that he's going to ink the Ariel as he has another proactive action that he wants to take in the form of Tinkerbell. And he's deciding that Tinkerbell is more important to establish. So he's saying, I'm going to shift my small Tinkerbell into a larger Tink, and that's going to be my songstress of choice. So I want to see how actually that choice develops for him. Again, the mirror being slow to the point where I do suspect that he would be able to do all of those if he inks something as simple as a smash, right? But opting instead to take a little bit of a more aggressive line of play and wanting to establish Tinkerbell. So let's see how that works out for him. And in the same vein, on the other side, what does the turn 4 option become? You get to play something like You Have Forgotten Me, and You Have Forgotten Me incredibly good in scenarios where neither player has access to something like Whole New World, which right now only our player on the left who went first has access to, so she can actually disrupt the hand of the opponent and not worry too much about it, as she can reset hands at any point in time. So do you want to see something like that Forgotten Me come down, or does she have an even more proactive play that she wants to go ahead and do? I mean, this is the benefit from being on the play. You're the first one who has access to those incredibly powerful 5-drop summons, and she actually just passes. So I do believe that the only reason she would do something like that is because she wants to have reliable ink on the You Have Forgotten Me on the following turn. So definitely a very astute play from her side, just deciding, okay, uh, any Whole New World is just going to reset the game at any point in time. So using this You Have Forgotten Me for ink is a lot more beneficial than ever playing it on the table. So I do like that choice from both players. Both players actually deciding the same thing, that You Have Forgotten Me not being that instrumental in this matchup, being better in a matchup like the control matchups. You know, those Ruby Amethyst players do need every single card in their hand. So do like the option of just inking it here and deciding, okay, we don't really need that for this sort of a matchup. So both players understanding the mirror quite well, understanding the builds quite well, and both players have access to songs now. Oh, and okay, so incredibly aggressive line of play here, being able to use the Tinkerbell in order to game 2 lore, and now the Tinkerbell is tapped. So how many resources does the player on the left get to use in order to deal with this Tinkerbell? Does she trade her entire field into the Tinkerbell? I mean, it does clear her field, making something like a grab your swords not that efficient. So I do like this sort of like 2-for-1 trade that she has available to her. I mean, alternatively, she can sing with Ariel, but that'll leave it open to being traded with the Tinkerbell. So let's see how aggressive she wants to be, how much she wants to invest into dealing with this Tinkerbell. I think everything should be invested into dealing with the only card in play, again, these singers, right? So anything that can sing a 5-cost song is incredibly powerful, and we do get to see best of both worlds. So she actually gets to go ahead and deal with the entire side of the field, and at the same time keep her aerial with grab your sword. So great inflection point in the game, and she still has all the ink available to her in order to do another play. She's going to go ahead and use the buyback ability to grab back her prince. So great tempo play there as well. So just all around a fantastic value turn, being able to deal with everything going on the other side of the table, while at the same time establishing a little bit of questing power here. Again, just like with the hook, the Prince Eric is not exactly powerful in terms of questing, just making sure she has enough ink to do any sort of play that she wants. Okay, there is 5 ink in play as she went first, and like we mentioned, Eric just not exactly incredible at questing, only 1 quest, but again trades that questing power in order to be able to attack for 3 damage, and we saw that 3 damage instrumental in dealing with this Tinkerbell. And again, we do get to see that that using the Tinkerbell to quest for 2 a little costly. So can our player on the right be able to do something like a buyback on this Tinkerbell? I mean, it would be quite powerful. It is a very slow, methodical play. He's not going to commit anything to the table this turn, but will be able to have access to that Tinkerbell on the following turn. So do like to see that buyback, and then still has access to this song. He might as well sing it now using the last two remaining ink. That song being able to be sung with basically any character that's 2 cost or more, but using it here just to round out his turn seems just efficient enough. So a lot of decent value cards from the side of our right-sided player, but does he have enough time to develop all of them? I mean, he is falling slightly behind. The ability to be able to sing with this aerial already proved instrumental once in this game, and again, going first, the first person to have access to those very powerful 5-drop songs, proving very important here. So again, establishing that Tinkerbell in the early game, I did like it as a form of being able to sing songs, but in order to only quest for 2 and then losing it to a very efficient trade with the Prince Eric, did not like that resolution. Didn't work out in our right-sided player's favor, but we'll get to see how he gets to come back during the course of this game rather. And we do see using 5 ink, very organized, very very deliberate tapping um, in order to use Beast. Now, Beast is not going to get any additional advantage in the mirror, not anything to destroy other than Lantern, but Lanterns have not been played so far. So instead, just using it as a threat, saying, okay, this is going to go ahead and quest for 2. And since I'm on the advantageous side of the table, I'm going to go ahead and just play my threats accordingly, deciding, okay, now that I have control of the game and I presumably don't believe that you have a way to deal with these cards quite efficiently, I'm just going to little by little gain enough lore to win the game. So how does a right-sided player get to respond? I mean, he's definitely deliberating on whether he wants to play something like a slower game plan, solidifying his position with these 4 drops, or does he want to just go ahead and ink basically either of those 4 drops and then slam the Tinkerbell and play? I do like the Tinkerbell as it basically check marks um, her entire board, but will it leave something like a Rapunzel as a viable option? Because, okay, if Tinkerbell is the play here, so now if there is something like a Rapunzel as a rebuttal on the other side of the table, our left-sided player is going to be able to actually draw 2 cards if they heal their aerial. So very interesting inflection point here. Is that Rapunzel available? We did see that one of them was inked earlier in the game, so maybe access to that is not readily available. But if it is, she is going to actually go up so much in card advantage, and it might even segue into something like another 5-drop song like that Whole New World. So Rapunzel here would be fantastic. Let's see if she actually has access to it. Does she want to answer Tinkerbell with her own Tinkerbell? That's also a possibility. Okay, so another aerial. So this aerial, quite good. Obviously being able to draw something like a Whole New World, and then it's actually Kuna Matata. Oh no, wait, no. So Be Our Guest. So okay, so we go ahead and get Be Our Guest, and does Be Our Guest get inked or played? Either option is fine in this scenario. She is looking for quite pivotal cards like that Tinkerbell. So we do get to see a little bit of deliberation. Being ahead in this scenario is good, but again, Tinkerbell from the right-sided player just holding down the entire field. If anything goes ahead and quests, there's going to be a lot of problems as Tinkerbell can basically deal with any 2 cards on the other side and still survive. So Ariel is actually going to sing. Okay, so singing here with Ariel. Prince could have also sang as he is a 2 cost as well, but we get to see Ariel singing here. Just she has the most amount of damage, so putting her sideways is very efficient in the sense that if she gets attacked into, it's the least a loss, I suppose. So singing with her does have merit, but let's see what the follow-up is to doing this, because now that one card has actually been put sideways, every card should be go ahead and quested with, but we only see Ariel face down. So, okay, this might just be a bait, basically saying, okay, you're going to be able to deal with my Ariel on this turn, but I'm okay with losing my Ariel because you can't go ahead and deal with the beast with the 2 damage that the Tinkerbell allows. So it's essentially saying you have to just trade your Tinkerbell for my Prince Eric and my Ariel, and I'm okay with that, and I get to keep my beast. So, and the right-sided player says, okay, well, I'm fine with that. I'll go ahead and use the Tinkerbell to deal with 2 threats on your side of the table, dealing with the Prince Eric, or he could also opt to chip damage the beast and then use something like a removal spell or the cannons, for example, to deal with it. Just a lot of options with this trigger from the Tinkerbell. And we do see a replacement aerial there, so losing the first aerial, not that detrimental, but what exactly? Oh, and if he actually drew another Tinkerbell, for example, he could actually put the damage on the beast and then Tinkerbell away the beast, but no, not that option available to him. So we're going to see just dealing with the hook. Hook very efficient. Oh, and we get a heal. So the Tinkerbell goes up to max stats again, and at the same time drawing an extra 2 cards. Every time I see Hakuna Matata, I get so happy. I know that it is just going to get inked every single time, but it's just a very fun card to watch on camera. So all in all, pondering, does he get to? So he goes ahead and inks the Hakuna Matata and then deals with this beast. Is presumably what's going to happen with something like this smash. Very powerful play in stabilizing the field. Beast, obviously the only 2 quest threat on the other side. Want to get rid of that as fast as possible. Goes ahead and does so. And now, not having used Beast for his quest on the previous turn, does come back to bite her a little bit. But it is okay. It is only 2-2 in terms of lore right now. So the game has not gotten away from either player at this point in time. But solidifying his position on the board does the right-sided player, buying back this Tinkerbell and then using it to deal with multiple threats during the course of the last few turns, proving instrumental. And then we get to see Tink from the left-sided player. So now it's a Tink on Tink battle. Tink carnage, one could say. And just dealing 1 damage each threat, not enough to deal with either of these threats. And Rapunzel, on top of the fact that she is incredibly powerful as a card advantage tool, she also survives a lot of chip damage in this mirror match. So incredibly good card. And does the left-sided player, does she actually have a way to finish off this Tinkerbell? Because something like a second Rapunzel would be terrifying in this scenario if that Tinkerbell gets to live. So, and we don't actually see it. So, okay, so this is basically a Rapunzel check. If there's another Rapunzel available, or could there be something like this Hakuna Matata actually being played for value? It goes ahead and heals everything on the table on your side for 3, so definitely a good amount of value there. And just top to get Rapunzel and being able to draw 3 extra cards. And that is, one would imagine, the ultimate inflection point in this game. Now the right side player is going to have the total amount of card advantage for the rest of the game unless something like a whole new world is played from the side of the left player. And oh my goodness, such a good card is Rapunzel. Fighting for both the top spot as the best character in the game and also the most expensive one too. So just proving why she is so good, being able to keep Tinkerbell alive while at the same time just getting all those precious resources to hand. And now we see Ariel singing and just Ariel never whiffing. These song decks just playing upwards of 14 songs. I love the innovation. I love the Hakuna Matatas. It is definitely some of the most wonderful phrases being thrown out there right now. So right-sided player in complete control. Does he start questing now? I mean, he was not afraid of questing when he didn't have control of the board. So I would presume that he's actually going to quest when he does have control of the board, right? So would make sense in that way. Just forcing action from the left-sided player. Left-sided player showing that her hand was not that powerful on the previous turn, but does she have a way to solidify some sort of a comeback here? Do know that she has a grab your swords in hand. Is she going to be able to get as much mileage out of that as possible? We do see something like Tink attacking Tink, resulting in Tink being defeated, obviously. And then the 2 damage can go on Ariel or the other Rapunzel, and then something like grab your swords would clean one of them up. But again, just not incredibly efficient. If only that, but if you combine it with an attack with the aerial, so the aerial goes into the Rapunzel, the chip damage from the Tinkerbell goes into the aerial, and then you do a grab your swords, you can wipe most of the board clean. but then the Tinkerbell that remains alive is susceptible to this Rapunzel. So a lot of trading is going to go on over the course of the next few turns. And okay, we do see a smaller attack here. So this attack indicating to me that she wants to chip damage maybe the Tinkerbell so that it has to trade when attacking back. Or maybe she's going to target something like the aerial, like we mentioned earlier. Okay, so putting 2 on the tank, and now going ahead and singing this. Okay, so a tempo play here, deciding not to attack with aerial and instead deciding to use her for song, lets her tempo out another threat in hand. So this is another possibility. And we do get to see why she did that, actually. A phenomenal line of play here, because now she gets to just hard slam the second Tinkerbell in play, deal with the aerial anyway, with the enter the battlefield, deal 1 to everything effect, and then at the same time, very efficiently dealing with all the cards in play, only leaving her Tinkerbell with 1 damage in play. So, such a great line of play being shown, just great prowess from our left-sided player, and now with all the cards in the world from that draw 3 from Rapunzel, how does the right-sided player get to respond? This mirror match, incredibly interesting. Definitely a benefit to have the most ink available, but at the same time, the card quality matters most. And whoever's having more Tinkerbells does seem like to be in an advantage in this scenario. So a lot of damage being traded back and forth. And Rapunzel, okay, so this, a little bit of a slower play, but it does solidify some more card advantage. And again, we do see just taking the mirror match as slow as possible does tend to work out if either player is in any sort of duress. Just taking your time, making sure that you get to draw as many cards as possible, and then solidifying some sort of questing threat after that. Another inflection point is going to be whether these Rapunzels get in for chip damage. I mean, having 6 lore already, not an inconsequential amount of lore. He could just say, okay, I'm going to go sideways with every single card for the rest of the game, as I have this small window of advantage. I'm going to go ahead and ink something and then play Beast. So, powerful turn all the same, and now debating again. Since he has that lore advantage, does he lore with his Rapunzel? The answer is no, and we return to the left-sided player. Just counting out the ink, making sure ink allocation is correct. Ooh, and we do see Cerberus. Okay, so Cerberus is very powerful. Again, not necessarily the best questing threat, but it is an incredibly large character, being a 5/6. One of the only cards in the steel color that can actually efficiently trade with something like Maui when played. So I do like that addition to the 5-drop slot. It can also sing, so go ahead and bark, bark, bark. It's way through a Disney song. That's kind of cool. Go ahead and questing for 4. So, okay, so definitely felt like she was a little bit at a deficit in terms of questing. So she determined, okay, last time I wasn't able to quest with my beast and it was destroyed with a smash. Now I'm going to definitely cash in these questing threats in the Tinkerbells, and they're not that easy to be dealt with on the way back. He's going to have to trade his entire beast or cobble together some sort of powerful damage-based strategy. He could actually cast a Surfing Stitch and draw an extra 2 cards. We have seen him prioritize card advantage previously. Does he prioritize even more card advantage this turn? I mean, at some point you have to be able to regain tempo advantage on the game and turn your card advantage into board control, into questing power, and then eventually into lore to win. So he has to at some point start converting those cards in hand. You can take the mirror match slow, but how slow exactly will be the question. Considering, does he want to go ahead and sing or hardcast? He actually has upwards of, it looks to be 10 ink, so he can actually hardcast the Grab Your Swords. This Grab Your Swords not dealing effectively with anything in play right now, and there's no Tinkerbell. to clean everything up right now this turn. So what is going to be the line of play here? Maybe just opting into something like I'll grab your swords this turn and then try to top deck something like a grab your swords on the following turn, dealing with the entire board the same time. I mean, maybe that's why he's been drawing so many cards. He's basically telling himself, okay, I'm going to go for a wombo combo play where I deal with the entire table on my opponent's side of the table at the same time with multiple grab your swords. And he knows that there's no Rapunzel access. But if there is something like a top deck Rapunzel at this turn, healing that Tinkerbell up to full and then drawing 3 cards, that would be quite incredible. We get to see something like that come through. That's 5. Okay. Grab your swords here, but there is something to be said about this. Tinkerbell can't crash into any target card and then finish off any card. So this grab your swords is just going to be a setup grab your swords, much in the same way as the right-sided player used it for. So it's just going to come down to who gets to see that second grab your swords quickly enough and release beasts trade on this following turn. I mean, you would suppose that with her going to 11, he has to deal with this board on this turn, regardless of whether he wants to use his beasts or not. He has to draw cards and then try to sing his way to another grab your swords, or alternatively just do those on-field trades that we've been talking about. So he has options at this point as to what he wants to ink. I mean, it doesn't really necessarily. It could actually matter a lot. So this Hakuna Matata actually proving instrumental in the sense that it can actually be used for value here, countering an entire grab your swords from the other side of the table. So Hakuna Matata proving that it's not just ink, it's actually quite a wonderful little tool in order to reset the whole table here. I just love the versatility of this card coming through. Oftentimes just being thought of as a search target, but in this case, actually profoundly good. Essentially canceling out a grab your swords, and now only the grab your swords from the right sided player matters at this point. If he does find one, he gets to deal with essentially almost the entire table on the way back. And does he actually find it in these 2 cards? We're gonna find out right now. He doesn't, but he does get 2 cards closer and does have a little bit more fuel to work with. But at what point do you decide, okay, this race, I am not winning this race right now on the table, so I have to trade? And if he does opt to trade, how exactly does he do it? Does he give up both his Rapunzels to trade into a Tinkerbell or just the beasts and leaves the Cerberus alive? I mean, so many different options available to him. Goes ahead and says, okay, Beast, you have served me well. You have sat there on the table for a few turns. I'm going to cash you in. Trading Beasts for Tinkerbells. Good trade overall, but those Tinkerbells, again, already quested for 8. So will it be enough? And this Ariel still able to sing for 5, as well as the Cerberus being able to bark his way through a song as well. So the Rapunzels get cashed in for a little bit of racing value. I mean, at this point in time, after those trades, it does feel like the right-sided player can race. I mean, he is going to solidify himself at 10 to the 11 of the left-sided player. And again, the Hakuna Matata putting both of these Rapunzels at max stats, moving quite nice. Thinking at this point in the game, something, maybe a Surfing Stitch is the option we use right now. That would be the perfect card in this scenario, actually. Oh, and it is Surfing Stitch. Perfect. So, okay. So it's going to be solidifying her position on the table while at the same time drawing 2 extra cards and putting a 2 quest threat in play. This Surfing Stitch, his name is Surfing to Victory here. So incredible last card in hand to have, and then leaving up the Ariel just to make sure that she doesn't get dealt with value-wise by this Rapunzel. So like everything that's going on here, definitely a left-sided player. She showed that she knows how to trade effectively on the table with different Tinkerbell plays and then maneuvering her way through Rapunzels from the other side. Now what's going to, I mean, these stitches 4 8s on the table. Incredibly difficult bodies to deal with. And you have to imagine with both players cresting the 10 lore portion of their playmats, you would suppose that now it's going to devolve into this sort of racing situation. I mean, you would expect the right-sided player to have all the options available to him because he's just gotten so much Rapunzel value, but those Rapunzels were very costly. I mean, he had to skip so many turns using those. And there you go, hard whiff on the aerial there. A lot of songs has been used over the course of the game. He did open with at least 2 to 3, so reasonable for it to whiff in this scenario, but he needs all the help he can get when it comes to these songs, and neither player resolving or even seeing a whole new world. I mean, a whole new world would be a very interesting game reset at this point in time. So actually an incredibly powerful smash because now there is nothing to check both this Stitch and the Rapunzel. So the Rapunzel's actually going to stand tall as a 1-5 and be able to quest, if not once, twice, and actually going ahead and inking. Oh my goodness, it's going to be another Tinkerbell established. So this is going to deal with the aerial in play, and then make it so that he can actually quest with both his 2 quest threats. Go up to 14 and not having a very efficient answer to either card in play. So right-sided player just identifying that he's actually slightly ahead in play if he goes ahead and inks a very powerful card in Hans, but right now he doesn't need it. He just needs to quest to victory as soon as possible. That's how he's identified. So, okay, leaving the Rapunzel behind, he's playing around most likely attack with Stitch into Tinkerbell 6 drop. But again, he wants to end the game as fast as possible, so leave it behind. I mean, just playing into the Tinkerbell might not be that instrumental at this point in time, but he chooses to just take it a little slow, wait. He has been known to take the mirror as slow as possible over the course of the last few turns, just opting more for value. And I mean, it's worked out. He has a few extra cards in play. And can Hans actually change the dynamic of this game? And, okay, so our left-sided player is actually opting for a race, but it is not necessarily a very contestable race, as now everything just goes sideways and actually puts the right-sided player to 19 if he goes ahead and opts for that line of play. Alternatively, he can deal with the Stitch in a myriad of ways. You would suppose everything sideways, go to 19, and then just slam dunk this small Tinkerbell in order to close out the game on the way back. Presumably, nothing to be done from the left-sided player if this line of play goes ahead and it's taken. Yep, so just go ahead and play Tink, and then we're going to reluctantly see. I'll go ahead and gain 7 lore. Why not? That's for 7. Pretty powerful when you have access to it. Oh, but he actually goes for the trade. Okay, so just cutting off as many, theoretical outs as possible. The other side of the table, deciding, okay, we have complete control of the game. Let's play around whatever niche possibilities of a comeback the left-sided player has. And this is fine too. Is presenting lethal right now. If this very wounded Tinkerbell is not dealt with, it'll definitely represent game. And with 4 damage on the Stitch. Okay, so there it is. So not actually enough to deal with Tinkerbell right now, but in combination with the Hans effect, she is going to quest for 2 and actually deal with the Tinkerbell in play. So and Tinkerbell just goes away automatically. So that might have been enough to actually deal with her. She only has 5 willpower, so that makes sense. Very timely third Tinkerbell for this game. I mean, Tinkerbell obviously instrumental for both players. Hans, I would agree that we are behind enough to have to cash him in at this very particular moment. And then the ping damage, unfortunately, not necessarily good on any particular target. Maybe something like putting it on Tinkerbell in order to make grab your swords a little more effective later. Trying to deal with this Stitch, but now the right-sided player might actually be thinking to himself, I'm going to leave everything untapped until I have enough to just outright win. And actually, he decides to go ahead and tap the Tinkerbell in order to find an additional bomb. He was hoping for something a lot more exciting. And then just Hans able to get value over the course of a few turns, but not that much value on the exact turn that he's played. You know, being able to quest in order to deal 1 damage to the Hans on the other table would have been fantastic, but he has to wait a whole extra turn cycle in order to be able to quest with that. So, alternatively, this Rapunzel can go ahead and deal with Hans, or he can go ahead and quest with everything. He's identified that he can actually just try to race to close out the game. And is this going to be it? This is one of the final turns of the game. Find something like a grab your swords from the left sided player. Grab your swords would be fantastic here. Being able to chip damage. So many cards in play. Tinkerbell just not timely enough. And what is that last card in the hand? So, assuming that that last card in hand is something inconsequential, how do the trades work out in her favor? So, she would have to do something like presumably deal with Stitch. Stitch having the highest willpower left over, other than that, Rapunzel. So, if he deals, and I don't think there's any combination of attacks that can try to get her over the line here, unless that last card in hand, could it be border wipe that she needs? That would be unbelievable if it actually is. See something like a grab your swords, that would be absolutely fantastic. Will it be enough? It's not. Okay, so the last card in hand was actually a blank, and we just turned sideways. That'll be the conclusion of game one, and incredibly exciting from both sides. I mean, a lot of rules to be followed in the mirror match, especially when it comes to, protecting and using Tinkerbell. We saw that Tinkerbell was the most instrumental card aside from grab your swords. Both players being able to use those chip damage, moments to their advantage, especially the right-sided player who got to use his chip damage in order to finish off a lot of the cards on the other side of the table while at the same time healing off the chip damage from the opponent with Rapunzel's in order to stay afloat in that game with card advantage. So very good overall from the right-sided player taking a victory in game one. And how is the left-sided player? How will she navigate game two? I'll find out right now. Player's probably going to mulligan into a decent curve. These decks, something to be said about the Song Amber Steel deck is a lot of the cards do have essentially the same functions when it comes to starting hand. Just want to mulligan pretty much into Ariel is one of the most important cards. Go ahead and mulligan in 3. Presenting. Letting our right-sided player just keeping everything. And going first again, inking the Hakuna Matata and playing Hook, so again chooses to ink the Ariel like he did in game one. Instrumental card, but in too many numbers, not seeming favorable. So definitely choosing to ink one as he has another one in hand. We did see him prioritize Tinkerbell into shifting larger Tinkerbell in game one. So will the same strategy be employed for game number 2? Have you forgotten me being inked consistently in the mirror match as a whole new world would just mitigate that altogether. So both players showed that in game one that card just gets inked most of the time. 2 Rapunzels being seen from the right-sided player, and so questing Hook in the face of opponent Hook, just resulting in favorable trade for the Hook on offense. But again, every lore point proving very important. Presumably, those hooks were just going to get grab you sorted in the end, or smash in this particular case. So smash plus Prince Eric gaining 2, a very aggressive take on the mirror match from the left-sided player. The left-sided player opting for rushing lore versus the right-sided player. We have seen time and time again choosing methodical, slow as his approach, surgical in a certain way. And his Ariel goes ahead and try to find a song. Be prepared. Mostly inkable, but a great target for Ariel in this case. Let's see. And she actually continue to apply pressure in this sort of scenario where the game will, after this Ariel, resolves and is able to sing for the first time, it'll prove to have a lot of tempo advantage. So I wonder how she's going to deal with this Ariel smash being the perfect option. So second smash dealing with this Ariel in play and then going up to 3 lore already. So good amount of lore being gained overall. And the response, nothing to cure with Rapunzel this time around. So slightly inefficient threat. So maybe he's just going to opt for something like a Hans instead. Hans incredibly powerful at being able to deal with cards that have already been damaged. And like we saw in game one, just a lot of damage trading happening back and forth in the mirror match. So great option to just place on the table here. Neither player being able to sing in this particular moment, which is surprising, but no 5 drops have been played so far, so and nothing available to be shifted onto either, so definitely a slower opening for both players. Have forgotten me. Down at 4. And a little bit of maybe a little misnomer there. Maybe thought that the discard card was actually played instead of inked. It was inked. And a tempo Rapunzel, like we were mentioning before, Rapunzel not incredibly impactful when you don't have anything to cure with it, but sort of a racing in the mirror match style where she's just racing to 20 as fast as possible. It does mean that she plays the Rapunzel on this turn and just says, if you don't have something to answer, there's Rapunzel on the way back. She's going to gain 2 quests. She's going to quest for 2 multiple times, but we did see that the right-sided player does have Cerberus, the perfect checkmark for this aggression, and now things are well and truly stunted from the left-sided player. And this could also be a consequence of the fact that she has to win a game incredibly quickly because a good amount of the timer has already been expended in game one, and she has to win a sort of a racing situation against the clock mostly. So that could be factoring into her choices of playing Rapunzel on an empty field, for example. And it is just a consequence of just barely not being able to convert the victory in game one.
Oh, look, they send the access number to your email. Look at how many times it is. Ridiculous.
To get to see here, Rapunzel on the servers, being able to heal it and draw a little bit of an extra card. So tempo play there. What does the right-sided player do in terms of closing out? So we have seen him big boards when at parity, and we have seen him be at a deficit in the early game in game one. Had a little bit of a deficit in game two also, but how does he close out as fast as possible while at the same time not overextending into something like a grab your swords and getting rid of all the resources from the other side of the table, and that's the Rapunzel and the grab your swords, and those would have been fantastic comeback mechanics, but that is one of the most back-breakings you have forgotten me I've seen in a long time. That card, incredibly powerful when it actually gets to resolve like that, and we saw both players ink it most of the time because, again, something like Whole New World just mitigates it, but in this scenario where it tags both last cards in hand, it's actually incredibly powerful. Do these Cerberus get to trade? She's opting not to trade into them, and this is going to give massive value to a second Rapunzel in hand from the right-sided player, and at this point, he is going to have max amount of card advantage, but he is falling really behind in this questing race. Opts instead to go ahead and draw 2 with the Stitch, and what the Stitch is going to allow him to do is actually, the Stitch is going to be able to attack over the course of the next few turns on whatever threats are played on the table, while also being kind of like a pseudo lightning rod bodyguard for his other threats in play, and then they are going to be able to quest form a little bit of a comeback. So a very good turn to take off in order to just establish a 4-8 in play, saying this 4-8 is going to gain incremental value during the course of the game, and then now forcing actually the hand of the left-sided player that doesn't exist because of You Have Forgotten Me, but forcing the hand in the sense that Cerberus is going to have to attack Rapunzel, and then that Cerberus is just going to get traded into by the other servers in play. And then at the same time, Stitch will stand strong against this Hans if Hans decides to go ahead and quest. So just having 8 willpower, the Stitch basically surviving any amount of chip damage. And going ahead and again, she needs to race as much as possible. So going to use Hans. Now the Cerberus on both sides would be destroyed if a trade would happen. Whoa, and actually, okay, so good little cycle here with Rapunzel, and that's actually quite fantastic in the way that Rapunzel will get her up to 10 lore on the following turn and gives her a little bit of a refuel in her hand. So now, and this sort of like race to 20 style, I mean, typically doesn't work out very well in the mirror match, but she's making it work with whatever resources she has left. So definitely not outside the realm of possibility that she just top decks 20 lore before the right-sided player can race. And again, another Stitch. Okay, so these Stitches could transition into something like, well, I will try to race you with these Stitches as I have full board control, and then at some point just sing some sort of removal spell. For the most part, he does have to deal with the threats in play, and this Cerberus can't trade into Cerberus because he will be defeated on the way back. So again, dealing with Hans, this means that the Stitch can't quest, so it's not gaining any sort of lore advantage. And it's going to come down to Cerberus is actually going to get a value trade on the Stitch on the other side of the table, and this Rapunzel is going to get to quest for 2, and then if these 2 cards in hand are instrumental in any way, maybe a third Rapunzel, maybe some sort of removal spell. I mean, good attack here, just completely getting rid of the Stitch on the other side. This attack is fantastic, finding a window for the Cerberus to get max value. And we do get to see, oh, could it be the third Rapunzel actually comes through, putting Cerberus back down to 1 and drawing 3 cards, a massive refuel. So she has full questing power advantage and same amount of cards in hand as the opponent. Very beautiful foil be prepared there, but or You Have Forgotten Me, but fantastic. This Rapunzel just proving why. Again, best character card in the entire game. And does she have enough time to convert a victory, bring this to a draw situation? Her strategy at the beginning seemed doomed in the sense that she was just going to fall dramatically behind in card advantage, but this Cerberus into Rapunzel line during the mid game and racing to 20 strategy, she's actually already halfway there with upwards of 15 possible quest on the following turn. So not outside the realm of possibility that this sort of race to 20 works out in her favor, and just not the right tools in hand right now to be able to deal with something like double Rapunzel. Again, took time off in order to establish 2 stitches in order to not fall behind on card advantage, but didn't solidify anything of a meaningful sort of tester to these 2 Rapunzels. But now, okay, Hans and presumably Beast will be the next card to come down. And with these 2 cards being able to at least contest one of the Rapunzels while the Stitch tries to attack into the other one, does the Stitch even attack into it? Does he actually quest? So he goes ahead and quests. I know it does seem like we're going into turns here, with turn 0 being our left player. So she is awarded first turn in time. To see a Tinkerbell. So right now, just a 14. Is she able to again get to that magic number 20 for the end of turns? It's looking possible if she had something, something like 2 characters that could quest for 2 each, but only being able to solidify a Tinkerbell on that turn. I think there's going to be enough value. And there we go. Grab your swords. That grab your sword is going to allow Hans to actually trade with one of the Rapunzels, and then Stitch is going to be able to trade with the other Rapunzel, or Beast, alternatively. And then, again, in time, this sort of race to 20 strategy was about to work out, but in turns, it's not looking too favorable. And I think what they're discussing is essentially, was the card hardcast or sung? I do believe it was sung. So they're going to go ahead and get that sorted out. George making sure that everything plays out the way that it's supposed to. And trying to resolve. And it seems like the Stitch actually did not get used to sing. Any combination of this sort of trade into both Rapunzel and then smash the Tinkerbell is going to make sure that any sort of sneak win from the left-sided player doesn't bring this to a draw, and we're just going to see the resolution as the right-sided player most likely inevitably taking the full match victory. But going through the motions is important, just closing it out, making sure that all bases are covered. He's going to go ahead and play forward, cut off any outs that the left-sided player might have in hand. Going to go ahead and trade his whole board to these Rapunzels in whichever way he deems necessary. I would suspect if he leaves all 3 of these cards in play, the left side player will win, so trades must happen. It's just debating on what would be the most optimal. He is very meticulous. Every assignment of damage is important in the mirror match because of things like grab your sword, so definitely fine to be deliberate in this scenario. So as long as there's any combination of those Rapunzels not being on the table anymore, gonna be good enough. And there you go. That'll be that. So Tink is left in play, but Tink by herself will not be a clinching factor, as there's still only questing up to 16 Okay, so we have, and again, the second you have forgotten me just being instrumental in the sense that this sort of like presumed comeback from the left-sided player was not able to be completed because and we do get to see grab your swords, getting rid of so many of the resources from the right-sided player, but is it gonna be enough? Right now, the Stitch can easily take care of the Tinkerbell, or he can alternatively use a Smash in order to get rid of it if he doesn't want to assign any more damage to the Stitch. Has been very conservative about keeping cards in play and using removal on characters instead. So either way, will be a match report soon enough, and then there we'll have round 3 shortly. But okay, so again, prioritizing cutting off any sort of comeback is the right-sided player. That should be his top priority. So smashing on the Captain Hook or the Tinkerbell is just fine. And then his follow-up play is going to be most likely innocuous threats like Tinkerbell and the Prince. It's Eric, just as a follow-up, but turns is going to end very soon. But again, always being sure to be meticulous about every choice in order to resolve everything as it's supposed to be resolved, which is fine. Final turn, and it's just going to be a top deck and a pass, and both players are going to agree to a resolution. So, your match, very interesting. A lot of rules to be followed, like we mentioned before. A lot of damage assigning to be, chosen. Both players. So just very interesting mirror match back and forth. And again, something to be taken away from that is Stitch just being such a powerful threat with that 4/8 stat line.